Hi, I'm Chris Haigh and this is the Fiddle channel, and today we're going to do All the Things You Are. All the Things You Are was a request for Michael, one of my supporters on Patreon. And this is a notoriously tricky tune to solo on. I'm not going to give you the melody. I'm doing a separate video on my Patreon page just for the melody. But there's more than enough to think about for the solo. And I'm going to try and give you lots of different approaches to what seems like an impossibly difficult chord sequence. Some jazz players call this All the Chords You Know. And at first glance, it's just a random set of chords and key changes and just unnecessary difficulty. But the more you look at it, the more you try to understand what's going on, the easier it is to get to grips with it. So I'm going to try approaching it from various different directions, and hopefully you'll get some clear understanding of how to follow it by the end of it. It was written in 1939 by Jerome Kern. It's in the key of A flat, and whereas I would often suggest for difficult keys you can change the key to a more fiddle friendly key, you're going to be playing this not with gypsy jazz players but with mainstream players probably, and they're not going to want to change the key just for the unfortunate fiddle player. So learn it in this key, the original A flat. The thing to do is to break this tune down into sections. The sections are related. The chords are not a random set, but they actually mean something. So the first thing to see is the first line. And one way of looking at it is a 4-2-5-1. Now, I did a video on the 2-5-1, which in this case is... The 2 chord is the B flat minor 7, the 5 chord E flat 7, but it's not just a 2-5-1, it's a 4-2-5-1, so the 4 chord is the F minor 7. So there's your 4-2-5-1. If you're not familiar with the 2-5-1, this is not going to be a helpful approach until you've learnt about that, but that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is the cycle of fifths, which is actually related to the 2-5-1. So look at the roots of the chords: F minor, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. So each of those is going down a string. That's one we're looking at, going down a fifth. So whatever you're doing on one chord, with the root, you take it down a fifth to the next one. And then this section finishes off with a nice simple G to C. So that's one way of approaching it. You look at the next section, it's doing exactly the same thing but from a different starting point. So we're now going from C to F to B flat to E flat to A flat, and finishing on D and G. So you could think of that as... So let's just play the roots on the A section. Now the C minor. One thing about this tune is the melody doesn't really help you at all in following the chords. What's actually quite useful is playing the root and the third. So just listen to this again. So that's worth doing. If you have access to making your own backing tracks, it's well worth breaking these sections down. So just do a loop of the first 8 bars, and then a loop of the second 8 bars, and a loop of the next 8 bars, and a loop of the last 12 bars. And that will certainly help you, rather than struggling through the whole thing each time. When we get to the bridge, we now have 2 2-5-1s. And the first of these 2-5-1s is the easiest: A minor, D7. That's 2-5-1 to a G, and then 2-5-1 to an E. And you can think of a 2-5-1 as just a scale. So for the A minor, and then for the F sharp minor, something like that. So wherever you start on the scale, just make sure you end up somewhere around the root chord. As I said, the A minor 7, D7, G major 7 is the easiest, and for that you can either relax for 4 bars, or you can use that as an opportunity to try some tricky lick that you might have spent a lot of time practicing, because 2-5-1s are a good thing to practice. There's one that is from my jazz violin book, the Exploring Jazz Violin. That one, which has flat 9 and sharp 9. So it throws in some interesting outside notes. I'm not going to explain that here, but yeah, so that's either take the easy way out or use the easiness of the chords to try something difficult. So, and then you've got the same thing, F sharp minor, B7, E major, and you've got that tricky little C augmented, which just play a C or a G basically over that. And then we're back to the but this one is different because it's got a different ending. It keeps going down. So we're going from F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, D flat minor 7, C minor 7, B diminished, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat. And the great thing about this line is you can actually play the A flat major blues scale through all of that, as I'll demonstrate in a minute. So far we have 4 sections. We have the first section, which is descending in fifths and ending up on a C. The second section descends in fifths and ends on a G. We have the 2 2-5-1s, and then we have this descending line, similar to the first line, but different, with a different ending. So I'm just going to go through playing root and third of the whole chord sequence. Okay, a few trips along the way, but that's to be expected. Okay, now I'm going to show you, oh yes, another way of looking at the A section, surprisingly, is to play Fly Me to the Moon. Because the chords are really very, very similar. So you see, it fits really easily. You just have to modify the ending a little bit. And people don't think of Fly Me to the Moon as a difficult sequence. So if you're already familiar with that tune, just get that into your head. You can actually drop a bit of the melody in as a joke, as a quote if you want, but you can use that as a kind of a guide to your ears to what's happening over that section. Finally, I want to show you what I call an internal melody, which is not following the roots and thirds, but is following, there's kind of a descending line that's going through most of it. And this is like an alternative melody that you could learn as your guide for soloing around, because soloing around the actual tune is not an easy thing to do. But just listen to this melody that I'm going to play, mostly descending lines. So if you learnt that as a melody, you could then use that as like the core of a solo. And I'll try and show you what I mean. So I'm going to use all of those notes, but I'm going to dance around them. So I was staying too close to those notes to be musical there, but it gives you an idea of how it gives you something else to hang on to rather than just the melody. One more thing, you could, and I do recommend this, arpeggiate the whole thing. So just for your practice, slowly 4-note arpeggios. Like that. And I did recently do a video which was called, I think, 10 different rhythms for jazz arpeggios. And there's another video on 4-note chord shapes for violin. So this will really help you to understand the chords, and when it gets to the tricky bits, you can use this as the core of your solo. So I'll go through twice. The first time I'll just do arpeggios. The second time I'll do a solo based around the arpeggios. So that's a very good approach for developing your chord skills. And that's something I usually resort to when the going gets tough. I go from nice freewheeling stuff to hanging on to those arpeggios for dear life. Okay, I'm going to finish off with a solo where I will do as much A flat major blues scale as I can. So that most of the A section you can do that on, and all of the final section you can do that on. And you'll be surprised by how well the blues scale works over those final 3 lines. If you would like a copy of the sheet music, do subscribe to the channel, send me an email. Just to remind you, on my Patreon page there is the melody of this song, a lesson on that, and it's the Patreon that helps to keep these videos coming. Thanks for watching. I'll play you out with this other solo.